This is the second video clip on the revision for S3 assessment, and it's the calculator paper and it's at the National 4 level. In this clip here what we're going to be looking at is trigonometry in the form of trig ratios, or you may know it as SOHCAHTOA. We'll do some percentages, some standard form, we'll be doing perimeter and area with combined circle and rectangles, and also there'll be some money questions in this section that we're doing here. Right, so let's go ahead and we'll start up with question 9. Right, so question 9 here, what we have is a shelf is supported by brackets. Each bracket is a right angled triangle, so this is our bracket here. Calculate the width W of this bracket. There we go there, and we'll answer to one decimal place at the end. Right, so what I've got here is I've got one side, and that's all I've got in lengths, and I've got an angle in there. I can't use Pythagoras theorem for this, so this must be a SOHCAHTOA question when I've got an angle in there like that. Right, so it's a trig ratio question, and what we'll do is we'll label up the triangle first. So that's the important part of this question here. First thing I'm looking at is this right angle, and that's going to be pointing across to the longest side, which is called the hypotenuse, okay? So this is the hypotenuse, so I'll label that H, hypotenuse. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the angle, and opposite the angle is the opposite side, so I'll label that up O. The side that's left is the adjacent side, so I'll label that up A. And adjacent just means that it's beside the angle that's there. But that's the order that I would label them up. I'm then going to write up SOHCAHTOA to try and help me. SOH, so Ka Toa. Okay, so there's SOHCAHTOA written up. What I'm going to use that for is to work out which parts of the triangle that I know. So if I look at the triangle, there's some parts that I know and some parts that I have to use within the work I'm doing here to work out the size W. So I need to use O. So I'm going to tick the O's in SOHCAHTOA. I know this size here, which is the A, so I'm going to tick the A's. And what I've got here is 2 ticks, so I'm going to use the tan ratio. Okay, so the way that SOHCAHTOA is set out, what we're going to be doing is we'll be using one of these buttons that's here, and they're lined up to say that the SO part is the sine button, Ka is the cosine button, and the Toa is our tan button that we're going to use. So what I'm going to write down first of all is the tan ratio. So tan X is going to be equal to, and the way that I've written that, I've written the middle letter up. That's because that's going to go on the top line. So tan X is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. And it's the same if it's a sine or it's a cosine, they would be on the top. Right, so what I'll do is I'll replace whatever parts that I've got with information from the triangle. Right, so I've got tan of the angle that I'm working with, which is 53 degrees, is equal to the O on the top, and O is equal to, I'm just going to change that to the letter W because that's what I've been asked to work out. And instead of the A, I'm going to put in the 14. So that's me substituted my numbers in there. Right, to get W on its own, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the 14 up at the top here. If I'm dividing on one side, I'm going to multiply when I take it over the equals. So I've got 14 times tan 53 degrees is going to be equal to W. So what I'll do is I'll work that out on the calculator. Right, so I'm going to go 14, so that's 14 in the calculator. I'm going to multiply by tan, so it's the tan button, and I'm going to put 53 degrees in. 53 degrees, close that bracket, press equals, that gives me my answer. So I know that W is going to be equal to 18.5786, and we're working in centimetres. When I look at the question again, I just want to check to see if there's any rounding involved. I'm going to write this to one decimal place. To one decimal place, I'm going to cut here, look to the right, that's 7, I'll change that 5 up to a 6. So I've got W is equal to 18.6 centimetres to 1 decimal place. Okay, that's the answer for that. So that's the first of the trig ratios that we've done, and the first of the SOHCAHTOA, if you want to call it that. Okay, let's look at question 10, and we'll start to move a bit quicker on this one. So question 10. Right, so 40 people were asked whether they preferred tea or coffee. 18 of them said they preferred coffee. What percentage said they preferred coffee? So all I'm going to do is the percentage preferring coffee is going to be equal to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this as a fraction first, okay? 18 of them said they preferred coffee, so that's 18 over 40. And to change that into a percentage, all I'm going to do is multiply it by 100. So in my calculator, what I'm going to put in, I'm going to put 18, I'm going to hit the divide button, I'm going to hit 40, multiply by 100. So that's what I'm going to enter into my calculator. Right. Okay. So in the calculator, we're going for 18 divided by 40 times 100, and that gives me 45. So that's 45%. And that's the answer to that question. Right, so question 11. A stack of 500 sheets of paper is 45 millimeters thick. Calculate the thickness of one sheet. So 500 of them are 45 millimeters thick. If I divide 45 by 500, I should get the thickness of one sheet. So thickness of one sheet is going to be equal to 45, that's millimeters, divided by 500. Okay, so it's a calculator paper, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do that in my calculator. So here we go, we've got 45 divided by 500, and that gives me 0.09, the answer was in millimeters, so that's 0.09 millimeters. Right, so if I look at the question again, I just want to check to see if I have to do any rounding, but no rounding, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it in standard form. To write that in standard form, I'm going to write down the number that I have, which is the 9. So I've got 9, and what I'm going to do is that's times 10 to the power of something. Okay, it's like 9.0 because I just need the number before the first decimal point. And I'm going to see how many places I have to move that. So I'm moving it 2 places to get the decimal point into there, and that's going to be at 2. But because that's a really small number and I'm moving the decimal point to the right, it's minus 2 millimeters. And that's my final answer for that question there. Okay, we're on to question 12. Question 12 is to do with a birthday card that we have here, and the birthday card is shaped like a rectangle that I have here, and on the top looks like a half a circle, which is a semicircle. Right, and what I have to do is I have to calculate, there's going to be gold ribbon that's going to be around the border, so around the outside of this card. So it's going to be a perimeter question, where I'm going to work out the perimeter of the whole shape, but certainly the bit that's going to be the more difficult part is the perimeter of that half circle or that semicircle, and that will give us the total length, and there's a bit of rounding that I have to do at the end. Right, so let's find out if it's a perimeter type question when a circle's involved. I'm going to be using the circumference of a circle formula. So I'm going to bring that back up. So I'm going to look at my front page again, and I'm going to look at this. Here's the circumference of a circle is C. Okay, C for circumference is equal to pi d, and pi times its diameter. Remember, the diameter is all the way across the circle. Right, so I'm going to be using C is equal to pi d. Remember, that's for a whole circle, as if I had a circle that was going all the way around here. I only want half a circle, because that's going to be the distance from there round to there, so that I'm going to have to then divide this by 2 to get my distance around the outside there to there. Right, so I'm going to substitute my values in. D is the distance all the way across there, which is 12. That's my diameter. Remember, the radius is just halfway across, which would be 6. Diameter I need for this formula, so I'll put 12 in, and then I'll divide that answer by 2. Calculator question again. So let's make sure we just use our calculator. So pi button. Remember, that pi button is down on the bottom of the calculator. Times by 12, and then I'll divide that by 2, and that should give me 18.84955. And that's going to be giving me I'll give a 6. So I'm just going to round it to there so far. I have to give my answer to the nearest centimetre, so I'm going to be using the numbers that are more up at this end of the calculation. So what I'll do at this stage, I'm going to add all the bits up together, and then I'll do my rounding at the end. So this is of the semicircle. So we're working in centimetres here, and that is the distance from there round to there in the semicircle. What I now have to do is to add on 10, 12 and another 10. So my perimeter is going to be equal to 18.849556 plus 10 plus 12 plus that other 10 that's at this side over here. So plus 10. So again, I'll just use my calculator for that. I've left that number already in there. So I'll go for plus 10 plus 12 plus another 10. And that gives me 50.84955592. Just after leaving that number in the calculator, I have to round it to the nearest centimetre. So what I'll be doing is I'll be cutting the number here, okay, because that answer is going to be in centimetres. 8 is going to change the 0 up to 1, so it's going to be 51 centimetres to the nearest centimetre. Okay, so that there, when I worked out the perimeter, that's going to calculate the amount of gold ribbon that I'm going to need. So that's the gold ribbon needed. Okay, and that's question 12. Let's look at question 13. Right, so question 13. We have the population of China is 1.352 times 10 to the power of 9. Write this number in full. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write down these numbers here. So I've got 1, 3, 5, 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the decimal point. This is a really big number. It's times 10 to the power of 9. So I'm going to start with the decimal point there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 places. So my decimal point is going to appear right at the end here. So my number is going to have zeros in it. I'm going to put the zeros in where these wee arches are. So I'm going to try and make them reasonably neat so that I can work out how many zeros that I'm going to put in place. Okay, so what that will be is the population of China is going to be 13520000000. Okay, so that's the number that I'm looking for. Be very careful that you don't just add on 9 zeros at the end, because that's not the way that this works. We're moving the decimal point that number of places, the number that's sitting there. Okay, if it's a negative number, I'll move it in that direction, the decimal point. Right, so the population of Scotland is 5.2 million. How many times bigger is the population of China than that of Scotland? Right, so if I'm going to work that out, I'm going to work out how many times bigger it is. So the number of times bigger is going to be equal to, I'm going to use that number first and I'm going to divide it by that number there. So I've got 13,520,000, say 3 zeros and another 3 zeros, and I'll divide that by 5.2, and I'm going to write million in that type of form there. So I could have used this in that form also, and what I could have done is just divided that out. So let's see what we can do. Let's see if that fits into the calculator first of all. So I've got 1, 3, 5, 2, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. So let's see if that works in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that fits into the calculator that way. So I'll just use that. I'm going to then divide by 5.2 times 10 to the power of 6. So in the calculator, the way I can put that in is 5.2. That's 0.2. The button down at the bottom here I'm using, so that's times 10 to the power, this one down here, and that's times 10 to the power of 6, and my answer there is 260. 260 is my answer. Let's go on to question number 14. Okay. Question 14. Gina travelled from Rome to Aberdeen, where she changed, or she exchanged some money. It was €1,500 into pounds. Okay. She spent £875 in Aberdeen, and then changed the rest into Swiss francs before travelling to Zurich. Okay. How many Swiss francs did Gina receive? So that would be at the end. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the euros into pounds. So I'll say that the number of pounds that she got is going to be equal to, so it's the number of euros that we've got there, and I'm going to divide that by the euro exchange rate to pounds. Okay, so I'm going to divide that by 1.25. What that'll tell me is how many pounds she got. So on the calculator, just fire in 1500 divided by 1.25, and that gives us an answer of £1,200, or £1,200. Right, she spent £875 in Aberdeen. So what I'll do is I'll take £875 away from that. What that should tell me is how many pounds that she's got left. Okay, so 1,200 minus 875, that gives me 325. So we've got £325 here. Right, so we're now off to, or she's now off to Zurich, okay, and she's going to be exchanging this number of pounds into Swiss francs. So remember, when you're going away on holiday and you're changing your pounds into foreign currency, we multiply by the exchange rate. So the amount of Swiss francs is going to be equal to, so we're going to start with the amount of pounds, we're going to multiply by the exchange rate. So up in the table, it's the 1.44 I'm going to use. What that will do is that will tell me how much money she received. So 325, so 325 times 1.44, and that equals 468. So 468 Swiss francs. Okay. Let's go to question 15. Right, okay, question 15. The plan of a patio is shown below. The patio consists of a rectangle, so here's a rectangle here, and a semicircle, just a little extension out here. Okay. Calculate the area of the patio, and we'll round it to 1 decimal place once we've done that. Okay, so first of all, let's split it into two shapes. Let's call it we've got the rectangle and we've got the semicircle that's there. So we'll first work out the area of the rectangle. Right, area of a rectangle, remember the formula for that is length times breadth. And we're not given that in the formula list, but that's what we're going to use. The length of this rectangle is along there, so that's going to be 6. The breadth of it is 4. So that's going to give me a total of 24, and it's metres we're working in, so it's going to be metres squared because it's area that we're working with. So that's the first part that I've got. I need to now work out the area of a semicircle. So I'm going to look at the formula list. I don't have the area of a semicircle, but what I do have is the area of a circle. So area, A for A equals pi r squared, where r is the radius. If I work that out, the area of a circle, I can half it, and that will give me the area of a semicircle, or half a circle. Okay, so area, and I'll say it's the semicircle. I'm going to use pi r squared, because remember that's the area of a circle, and when I get that, I'm going to divide it by 2. So I'm going to substitute my values in. So r, now remember that the radius is from the centre of the circle to the outside that's there. Okay, so it's only half of that distance, so my radius is going to be equal to the diameter halved, or divided by 2. So if I've got 3 divided by 2, okay, that'll give me 1.5. So if I can't do that, then what I would do is I've got a calculator, so I can work that out on the calculator to work out that 1.5. So I've got 1.5 that's going to go here, I'm going to square that, and then I'm going to divide that by 2. Right, so all I'm needing to do now is to enter that into the calculator. Right, I'm going to enter the pi button, so that's shift and where the pi button's sitting down the bottom, times 1.5, and I'm going to use the wee square button, and then I'm going to divide that by 2. And that should be the area of that semicircle. So that'll be 3.5, and I'll just use it to there, to 3, okay? Right, and that's going to be in meters squared. Right, so I've done 2 separate calculations, but to get the total area, I'm going to have to add the 2 together. So the total area is equal to the area of the rectangle plus the area of the semicircle. Okay? Area of the rectangle was 24, plus the area of the semicircle, 3.53, and that equals. So again, I can use my calculator for it, or if I can see what the answer to that is, I'll just write that down. And that's going to be meters squared. Now look back at your question again, just when you finish, look, it's saying to 1 decimal place, so I'm going to cut this number here, the 3 is going to leave the 5 as it is, so my final answer, 27.5 meters squared, and that's to 1 decimal place. And that's that complete. Right, question 16. Okay. This will be the last one in this video clip. We'll finish with this one here. A submarine S dives for 300 metres, okay, at an angle of 24 degrees to the surface. Calculate the depth D, so I'm going to try and calculate that depth there, of the submarine as shown in the diagram. Okay then. Right, so I'm looking at this question here. If I have to work out a side, I'd first of all try and think of using Pythagoras theorem. Nope, I can't use that. What I'll have to use is trigonometry. I've been given an angle, so I'm going to be using trig ratio, and it's going to be SOHCAHTOA that I'm going to use. Okay. Right, remember the first thing that we're going to do with the triangle, we're going to label it up. So where that right angle is, just pointing right across there, right angle is pointing across to the hypotenuse, and remember that's the biggest side. I'm going to then go to the angle, and across there, opposite that angle, opposite the angle is the side O, so I'll label that one up. The other side that's left is the adjacent, so that's the A. I'm going to write down SOHCAHTOA. Whoops, I'm getting a wee bit tired, I think. Okay, so SOHCAHTOA, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tick the things that I need to find out. So I need to find out the O, so I'm going to tick the O's, and I've been given the H, so I'll tick the H's. Wherever I see the 2 ticks is the button on the calculator that I'm going to use. So again, just lining that up, I can see that it's the sine the cosine and the tan buttons. So they're the ones that I'm going to use in the calculator. In this case here, I'm going to use that sine button here. Okay. Right, I'm going to write down my sine ratio. So remember, it's sine of the angle. So sine x is equal to, and remember writing the middle letter up the way. That's the one that goes on the top, and the h goes on the bottom. So there's my trig ratio written down. I'm then going to substitute my numbers in, or my values. So I've got sine of the angle that I'm working with, which is 24 degrees, is equal to the opposite side, which I'm going to replace just with d, because that's what I'm trying to work out, and the h side that's on the bottom is 300. Right, so to leave d on its own, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that across to there. So it's going to be 300 times sine 24 degrees is going to give me a value for d. Let's work that out on the calculator. Right, remember the SOHCAHTOA is directing me to the button that I'm going to use, and I know that the button that I'm going to use here is going to be the sine button. So I've got 300 times sine button 24, close the bracket, equals, and that should be the answer. So what I've got here is d, it's going to be equal to 122.02099, okay, and that's in, let's see, meters. And is there any rounding here? No, but I don't need to round it at all, so that would do as my answer. But to make it a wee bit more realistic, what we'll say is, because that answer there is only given to the nearest metre, I'll just say that that's 122 metres to the nearest metre. Okay, so that concludes this part of the video clip. So that's 2 video clips that I've done so far, questions 1 to 8 and 9 to 16, and hopefully that covers the majority of the questions that are going to be in the revision pack, and that should help you out with the rest of the questions. You've already got the answers to the rest of the questions. What I'll do is I'll see you in the class tomorrow, and hopefully this has helped you a bit, okay? Good luck.